Hi, Mark Gilbert here. Thank you for clicking in on this video. What I'd like to talk with you about today is the topic of spiritual politics. That's a fairly broad topic that a lot can be included in, but today we're simply going to look at the topic of what do we mean by the term spiritual politics. In future videos, I'd like to take that context and apply it to some of the things going on in our world. Now, to look at the word spiritual politics, you have to get at the word spiritual. I did a whole video on what does it mean to be spiritual. The link is on your screen. But in that particular video, I used two key definitions that I want to use in this moment. One came from Wikipedia, where it said that to be spiritual is to be in the search for the sacred, that we're involved in the search for the sacred. So all of us in some way are in search for the sacred. You know, we can be somebody who is religious and we define the sacred in context of our religious rules and statements and what our religion means to us. Somebody could be atheist as well and say that all of life and what's sacred is really through scientific findings. So the search for the sacred can be through science as well. And then there are many of us who call ourselves spiritual but not religious, and we see an interconnectedness to all that is. We see a melding of spirituality and science. And in that, our search for the sacred involves transcending religion, but does involve science, and it does involve that sense of our connectedness to all that exists. In fact, the other definition of to be spiritual was one that I pulled from a couple of authors and used in that other video, where they said that spirituality, or to be spiritual, is expressing our true connection to all that exists. Expressing our true connection to all that exists. So then if we take the idea of politics, or being political, and what does that mean? Politics is simply activities associated with governance. Activities associated with governance. So if we are being someone who is spiritually political, or using spiritual politics, then what we are doing is expressing our true connection to all that exists through our governance activities. Or we could say that we are choosing our governance activities based on our experience to all that exists. In a sense, it is the interplay between our recognition of the unity of the world, the unity of all that is, our recognition of that, and bringing that recognition to bear within the political arena. Or it is stepping back and looking at the political arena from a wider lens and saying, this is giving us new evidence as to the interconnectedness of all that exists. We find a deepening of our spirituality through the political system itself. And it's not an either or, it's a both. So that when we talk about spiritual politics, we're also always talking about two things. Us coming at political actions with a spiritual aspect of recognition of the interconnectedness of all, and are using the political system and what's going on in politics to feed our recognition of the unity of all. One distinction that I would like to make here is between politics of religion and politics of spirituality. In other words, religious politics and spiritual politics. And it gets at the difference of what's the difference between religion and spirituality. In my mind, religion is a set system of rules and dogma, a set system of beliefs that say this is the belief of truth and the explanation of why we're here and how to be someone who shows up in the world. It has a certain degree of dogma to it, rules that you need to follow. There's also a power structure and an organization typically associated with it, such as the Christian religion, the Catholic faith, the Islam, Judaism, etc. There is some degree of organization to it. And that aspect of organization and dogma is what I consider religious. An application of religious politics can be seen by the religious right, the Christian conservatives in the United States, and their move towards supporting things that may not even be in alignment with their faith in order to move forward on an issue that's very important to them, which is the anti-abortion issue. In fact, in many cases, someone can sit back and look and say that the religious right has sort of allowed their principles to be co-opted to a degree in order to move forward on that one particular issue. And that kind of approach is what I see as religious politics, when you're letting your religion, your dogma, your beliefs based on the power of that organized religion move you to make political decisions that are in alignment with that dogma. Whereas spiritual politics are based on stepping back and looking at the interconnectedness of all that is, and using that degree of interconnectedness to say, okay, if everything is interconnected, then what is the proper approach and political decision in this particular moment? An interconnected approach to the abortion issue might lead to a broader degree of options rather than simply outlawing abortion. Outlawing abortion gets to a political, religious aspect of wanting to end all abortion, whereas a spiritual political decision has to recognize the rights of the pregnant woman, the father of the unborn child, the interconnectedness to the society in which that child is being born, the fact that all children born onto this planet need to have certain basic needs met and cared for. There's a broader context in the spiritual realm of looking at everything interconnected that might lead to a different degree of political actions on the abortion issue than a religious political action would be called to do. So what this example brings us to is a key component of the aspect of spiritual politics. And that's the fact that in any particular situation, we need to stop and back up from the polarized debate, from the either-or kinds of positions that are being presented to us, and ask the question, how is this tied to all that exists? How is this particular issue tied to all that exists? What that forces us to do is to go back and look at root causes over symptoms. I think that all too often we get into political polarized debates over symptoms and not travel backwards into what was the cause of those symptoms to begin with. You know, I've got to give kudos to Marianne Williamson for some of her recent debates in terms of trying to do this, where she points out that, especially say in the healthcare system, that we can argue about Medicare for all, or having a private option, or doing away with Obamacare, or enhancing Obamacare, etc. But in all of those debates, we are actually debating symptoms rather than debating causes. She suggests that we move back up and say, what is causing us to be sick in the first place? Why is it that we have so much illness in the United States? And when we do that, as she points out wisely, we have to look at other policies, such as the policies in our chemical processes, the policies in terms of our farm aid, and which things we're choosing to support and which things we're choosing not to support in terms of financial aid to what we grow and don't grow. It leads into the areas regarding the use of GMOs and the questions dealing with certain pesticides on our food supplies. All of that gets into not only our chemical policies, but it gets into so many other aspects of our political arena. And when we get back to it, we find that a lot of the root causes tie back to an over-influence of money and politics, an over-influence of the rich and the powerful and the corporations who are driven by their particular profits to have an undue influence to ensure that their profits are maintained. In fact, many of the political decisions that are made in this country are made because of the undue influence of money. So if we really want to solve many of the problems, we have to get back to that particular issue of money and politics. Marianne Williamson points this out, and I think this is one of the reasons that Trump actually was elected in 2016, is I think he spoke to that issue, because most Americans know this. Most Americans know that there is this interconnectedness of everything, and that behind the scenes, money is driving a lot of the political decisions over the best interest of the masses of the people. And they're wanting to take back the power. And through Trump and others, we are oftentimes choosing who is going to give us the best right to give us what we feel is needed in addressing the root causes to the problem. However, I want to travel back to even higher than the action of money in politics, because spiritual politics actually gets down to a key component of how we look at the world. Spiritual politics either says we look at the world as a world of separation, or we look at the world as a world of oneness and unity. A aspect of regular politics that's not applied by seeing the interconnectedness of all sees everything as separate and apart from one another. It's corporations versus people versus politicians, money versus voices, Supreme Court versus Congress. Everything is this individual unit that's vying for power and control and to win at the expense of others. There's a win-lose competition mentality within the concept of the politics of separation. Whereas a spiritual politics calls us to see a sense of unity and the interplay of all. And when we move into this place of spiritual politics where we see this interplay, we recognize that everything is connected, that we can't push on one thing without it pushing out on someplace else. And so we have to find not only, we have to find solutions that are win-win-win solutions. Now, what do we mean by a win-win solution? Well, obviously a win-win solution is when something that might be in conflict between you and me, that we find some solution that's going to allow you to win and allow me to win. But a win-win-win solution is one that not only allows both of us to feel successful in the solution that came out of the concern, but it birthed something greater and grander and new so that the whole system benefited, so that the whole unity benefited. And so what we need to do in a spiritual politics, ultimately, we're called to move away from a sense of the politics of separation to the politics of unity. Spiritual politics are calling us to see that everything is interconnected, that everything is one. We use the political system out there as a reminder by stepping backwards and seeing the interplay of everything. That when we see how everything is interconnected, what that does within our awareness is it reinforces within us a unity. And then that consciousness of unity, we are growing through seeing that in the political system and in every area of our life. We bring that unity consciousness to our decisions so that we call others to not be mired in the politics of separation where we're arguing and polarized over symptoms, but instead we're stepping behind the symptoms to the root cause and to the root cause of that root cause until we can find behind the scenes the real issues that are driving the actions that are leading to the sense of separation. And when we do that, we find solutions that call us to win for you, to win for me, and to win for the greater good for all of us. In future videos, I'll spend more time talking about certain specific situations where we can apply a spiritual political lens. But what I really want to anchor within you in this awareness in this moment is this concept of switching from a sense of separation to a sense of unity and to stepping behind symptoms and finding the true root causes. Till next time.